21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
Let's start with Waving Influence. So what drove you to start Waving Influence as a company, and what is the origin of the name? Because it's a very interesting name.
Sure. I'll start with the origin of the name, Martin. I had been doing some freelance work in social media marketing, and actually the name came before the business. Because I had been doing some blogging and I wanted to start my own blog. And so I asked my husband to help me think up a name for a blog. And the blog would be about social media marketing, about relationships, about leadership. And so I used the name Waving Influence for this blog that I started. And it was in about 2010 or 11. My husband came up with the name. He's amazingly creative, and he came up with the name, and I immediately loved it because it evoked this feeling of, the convergence of making a difference in the world and leadership, and people always love the name. I started doing some work, and it was like the beginning of my company. And at the time I was using the name for my company, 12-Minute Media. And the reason behind that was, I wanted to teach people how to use small amounts of time, but use it to build their online influence. And I actually have an ebook on Amazon called Twitter Tips, 31 Days of Twitter Tips, Grow Your Online Influence 12 minutes at a time. So the 12-Minute Media was the original name for the business. But what I found was that the name Weaving Influence was resonating much more. And so as I transitioned into owning the agency, I switched and used Weaving Influence as the company name.
What need does Waving Influence fill in the market?
Sure. So we are a digital marketing agency. As I got started, the original need that we were filling was partnering with authors on using social media to market their books. That's kind of where we began. But along the way, we added services to support authors, thought leaders, consultants, trainers, others with their digital marketing needs. And the problem that we're solving is helping people to create the biggest possible reach for their work. So whether that's a book, whether that's an idea, whether that's a nonprofit cause, whether that's a business, we want to help our clients to use social media and other digital marketing approaches to effectively reach those people who need their messages.
Okay, any analogs, antilogs? So, for example, there are some big names on the market like Scribe. Why you and not some other?
So, one thing that I think that is interesting, Martin, is that I don't really view necessarily any companies to be direct competitors to us. I love to collaborate with others who are doing similar work. But I would say what stands out about us is that we are able to partner with authors, especially authors of business books, to help them really understand the various steps that they need to go through as they bring their work to the world. So a lot of times authors have no idea what's required of them when they market a book. And particularly authors who have a traditional publisher, they expect that the publisher will do a lot to help them get their book out. They expect the publisher will do a lot to help them market. The reality is, and even my friends who work in traditional publishing houses, they'll tell you the amount of marketing that the publisher does is so little. And every author needs to become the chief marketing officer for their book. So what we're doing really as we work with authors is we're not only giving them kind of strategic guidance and partnering with them to help them navigate what can be confusing in bringing their book to the world, but we also provide hands-on execution support, which is quite different. So most of the time when an author is going to hire a team to help them with their book, they only think in terms of public relations or media relations. So they're wanting to partner with an agency or a firm who's going to pitch them to the media, pitch them to podcasts, get them articles. And what's different really about the way that we work is that we have a comprehensive approach. So public relations or media relations is only one part of what an author can do to spread the word about their book. And we really cover all the possibilities and helping authors think about how they can reach audiences. I'll give you an example, Martin. One of the things that I love to do is help authors plan and execute what we call a virtual launch party. So a virtual launch party is an online meeting, usually on Zoom, where the author invites their friends, family, colleagues, and at the moment that their book is coming out, they rally support. And as a team, we help the author. My role often is to tell the people who have come to the party what they can do to help their friend get the word out about their book. And that's not something that I've seen many other companies doing, is, planning and executing and supporting authors through these virtual events to help promote their books. So that's another example. So beyond even media relations or PR, which we do as an organization, we just do, almost anything that you can think that you could do to promote a book online. We provide that support to people.
Can you go more into your organization and your team? Can you share a bit about your team and how they help contribute to Waving Influence's success?
Sure, I would love to. So one of the things I figured out really fast when I started my company back in 2012 is I thought at first all I had to do was come up with a strategy. So I would meet an author, I would give them all the creative ideas, and they would go and implement them. But what I found out really quickly is most of them needed that hands-on help to do the work. So my team is comprised of, there are 10 of us who are employees. We have about 15 more who are contract workers. And every author is paired with a project manager. The project manager is the one who partners with them week in and week out to implement their approaches to market their books effectively. Most every author, if they've hired us to do media relations, also has a PR or media lead. We also have social media specialists. So when we're working with clients, we may have a client who wants us to write all the content for their LinkedIn or all the content for their Twitter. And so we're writing and scheduling and growing client social media accounts. We're writing and scheduling and sending email marketing. And we have graphic designers, we have video editors, we have audio editors. We have a really comprehensive team. And so whatever skill we need on the project, we will have those people contribute. There are also a few of us who are strategists, and my main role in the company is developing new business. So I talk with people who might want to work with our organization. I also work as a strategist. I'll partner with clients to craft a strategy for their digital marketing. And I also, of course, lead the team and, work on that side. So there's the whole building this organization side that I do, but there's also, the interacting with and serving our clients as well.
And the beautiful thing is everything under one roof. So design and communication, so everything is synchronized, I suppose.
Yes, that is true. We did, early on in my journey, we focused on that a lot, because with digital marketing, the most important asset is your website. And in the beginning, my team would say, oh, we don't build websites. Well, guess what? We started building websites because our clients needed a partner who could really think strategically about branding, all the things that you want to do when you want to build an online presence for yourself. So we really do provide almost every service. For places that we don't provide service, we always are happy to refer out. One thing I've noticed is that most authors need an executive assistant. We do not provide that VA or virtual assistant or executive assistant support necessarily, but we always encourage our clients to find that support, because chances are if you're doing a lot of marketing and you're trying to run a business, you might need some other help that we don't provide. But on the marketing side, we pretty much do everything.
A lot of us are coping with those likes and traffic and engagement, etc. So what do you think about vanity metrics?
Oh, I hate those vanity metrics. However, One of the challenging things, if you want to write a book, especially if you want to attract a traditional publisher, in the process of doing a book proposal, a traditional publisher wants to know that you're going to be able to sell a book. And really, the vanity metrics are the only ones they have. So what I try to encourage authors to do, and instead of thinking about platform, I encourage authors to think about building a community. And in my mind, the most important metric is not a vanity metric at all. It's the size of your email list of people who have given you permission to email them. So of all the metrics that there are to look at, to me, that's the most important one, because we found that email marketing converts better than any other digital marketing tactic. Now, that said, your social media accounts can be the place where you're building awareness to get people back to your website so they sign up to receive your newsletter. But, for example, if you think about metrics, if you go on my social media accounts, you might go to my Twitter and see that I have over 30,000 people following me. And you might think that's phenomenal, right? It's not like off the charts, but it's a pretty solid number. The truth is I get very little engagement from Twitter. I've been on Twitter a long time. I grew it a long time ago. It's really meaningless. What's more interesting or helpful is, the 6,000 that I have on LinkedIn. That's a community that's more engaged with me, more meaningful. But the most important number is my email list, which we have about 17 to 18,000 on our company email list. That is a powerful number. Those are people who have given me permission to write to them via email, who, a percentage of them will open my emails, a percentage of them will click through my links, will, answer an email, will personally engage with me. So I would encourage, people to think about which metrics matter the most to them. And quite often it depends on what you're trying to achieve. Of course, all that said, if you want to get a publishing deal with a traditional publisher, they're going to be looking at all the numbers and they want you to grow all of them as big as you can, as fast as you can.
I suppose it was not always so nice. What are some of the biggest challenges or some of the challenges?
Oh, so many challenges. I could talk about that all day, Martin. One of the things that's been challenging along the way, and I will say at the moment and for a long time, we've had the best team. I think about the men and women who work with me and their character and their dedication and their kindness and their collaboration with each other. My team is fantastic. But across 10 years, I've certainly hired people who didn't work out. And when you hire someone and it doesn't work out for one reason or another, maybe they're not quite who they seem to be in the interview process, or, they have other challenges along the way and kind of fitting into the company culture. That's hard. So I would definitely say, hiring the right people has been a challenge of, really figuring out who are we as an organization, what are the values that are most meaningful to us, and how do we attract and retain the right team members. So that's one. I'd say another one, honestly, is the whole idea of, well, how do you create an approach that's sustainable financially over time? I will own, and if people listen to this, so be it. Money is not my most important metric in life. And so as an entrepreneur, I wonder if sometimes that's like a disadvantage. Along the way, I identified generosity as being one of the core values of my company. So when you use generosity as a core value, one of the things you're deciding really in advance is that it's not only about profit for the owner of the company. Like, I want all the people in my organization to benefit financially when we create profit. And so just figuring out, how do we price in the right way to create profitability? What's the right amount of money to pay people so that they're happy, but also so that we can be profitable. And, the past few years, especially with COVID, have been challenging. On the upside, here in the United States, there have been some financial programs that have helped entrepreneurs. I'm sure you've heard about the PPP. There's also this employee retention credit, which is a tax credit. So thankfully, even though I had reduced revenue in my organization in 2020 and 2021, those 2 years of COVID, we did have this upside of some support from the government that's allowed us to remain functional and keep our team employed and all of those things. So yeah, those are just a couple of the challenges. I'll share one more. I think, as CEO or as the owner of the company, there's just sometimes this loneliness that happens when you're the leader, and really figuring out like how to build friendships. I'm busy building a company. I don't have a lot of time outside of work, and on the upside, there are some women who have been in my company for a long time. The two vice presidents in my company have worked with me for a long time. And so we have created this support for one another. But, at the end of the day, which I hate that phrase, we should take that word out. But at any rate, the pressure is still on me, and sometimes it feels very heavy to think about all the people whose life and livelihood is dependent upon me making this business work.
Let's go to your book. What inspired you to write your book?
Well, I've always wanted to be an author, Martin. I grew up, loving books, loving reading. I think that's one of the reasons why, as my company began to develop, it was such a perfect fit for me. I started my company at age 41. So it was really like a new career with me after having stayed home with children. So really from the time I started to work with authors, as I got to watch their journeys, as I got to see how powerful a book was in helping them to build their own thought leadership brands, helping them to build their own businesses, from 2012 or before, I always wanted to write a book. I, along the way, a couple of times tried to get contracts with the publisher and got a few no's along the way. So, why does anyone write a book? You write a book because you have a message to share that is of value to others. A book can scale your ideas in a much easier way than one-on-one conversations. So I wanted the chance, not only just for the joy of writing the book, which it was, a joy to write it. I love to write. I love, being able to make space and time for creativity, but also just the benefit to my organization as a whole. So we've been talking a lot since we passed our 10-year anniversary. We have a 10-year reputation of providing this valuable service to authors. And the book is part of that because we have also the knowledge and the approaches that we've developed. So I wanted to put those into a format that people could, easily access.
And the energy is amazing. Some videos that I saw regarding the book, those beautiful orange colors, music, messages, everything, the energy is absolutely fantastic. Can you say something more about the energy?
As I was writing the book, I discovered that writing a book is a process of discovery. And you start with one idea in mind, and as you begin to write, what emerges is the really powerful way that your ideas are codified or clarified in a way they never were before. And I'll share an example of that with you. So as I was writing the book, I was thinking, okay, what are those key factors that cause a person to grow influence online? What is it that across various experiences or observations, what have I seen those to be? The interesting thing that happened is in between the first draft of my book and the final draft of the book, my editor said to me, this word factors, 4 factors, it's really weak. Like, we need a different word here. And he threw out some ideas, and we landed on the idea of 4 commitments. And I think the idea of 4 commitments that you would make to create the biggest possible reach for your work is very powerful, because we can all understand the language of commitment. So I don't know, Martin, if you're married. I've been married nearly 30 years. What keeps a marriage going is a commitment. It's this vision of something bigger, more important than anything. And when we think about growing online influence, as I was researching the book, what came out are these 4 commitments. And I think they're true across the board for anyone who wants to make a difference in the world, anyone who wants to reach more people with their messages. And I'll tell you a little bit about them. There are 4. The first one is value. So anyone who wants to make a bigger difference online, and Martin, for you, for example, when you started the podcast, you did it probably because you had value to share with others. And that commitment to value is the primary commitment, because without value, you can't attract an audience. People are attracted because they think you have something to offer them. So the first and most important commitment is to value. And, value may be perceived differently. In the book, I use an example that, when you're a parent of small children, the thought leader you want to follow is the one who's going to help you get your kids to sleep better at night, because as a parent of young children, you're tired. Well, once your kids are teenagers like mine, I don't need anyone to tell me about how to get my kids to sleep. So that's not a value to me anymore. So the idea is you want to make sure that you're clear about the audience you're trying to reach and what is valuable to them. And then you want to create as much value as you can. So the second commitment is a commitment to consistency. And consistency is important because no one's going to follow you if you show up intermittently with value. They're going to follow the ones who are consistently delivering value, whether that's week after week or month after month or day after day. In the story, I talk about my friend Dan Rockwell. I don't know if you've met him, Martin, but Dan Rockwell is a blogger. He writes Leadership Freak. Dan has been writing daily blog posts about leadership 5 days a week for more than a decade. And so if Dan has grown an audience, and he has hundreds of thousands of people following his blog, it's because he keeps showing up day after day after day. So that commitment to consistency is really critical. Now, for those who say, well, I can't write a blog post every day for 10 years, that's okay. Not everybody has to have that kind of consistency, but whatever cadence you are able to sustain, if you continue to show up consistently, you will draw a bigger audience. So the third commitment is a commitment to longevity. And Dory Clark wrote a book called The Long Game. She goes way into detail. But in my book, one of the things I talk about is that, you can't really grow an audience overnight. And later, maybe I'll tell you a story that I have in the book about 500 trees. But we really have to have a long-term view of showing up with value in a consistent way. The final of the 4 commitments I mentioned earlier is generosity. And I think the more that we can be committed to sharing value freely with others, our time, our energy, our ideas, the more we will draw people to ourselves. And generosity is this unexpected element, but in every single case of the thought leaders that I studied, it emerged as important. And what I have learned, more than anything else as a business owner, is that I can never give away more than what comes back to me. And it happens all the time, like in the craziest ways. So Martin, I was mentioning to you the different programs that the United States has had to help business owners during the pandemic. Well, it hasn't been easy over the past few years. And it's like, it feels like every month it's just kind of scraping together. Like, are we going to make a profit this month or not? So yesterday morning, one of my VPs called me on the phone and she said, it's a very good day. And I said, tell me more. What happened? Well, we weren't aware of this employee retention credit, and apparently we're eligible for it. And we're getting a huge sum of money. Huge, about 15% of our annual revenue. How about that? To me, that's significant. And so I said to Amy, do you know why this is happening? And she said, why? I said, this is generosity. Like, we have been giving, and it always comes back, and you never know how, or you never know when, but it always does. And so that's one of the reasons why I just keep giving as much as I can all the time, not because I want to get it back in return, but just the joy of giving. And you can never deplete what you have, is what I've experienced.
Becky in 5 years, your company in 5 years.
Me in 5 years?
Yes.
Oh, wow, that's hard. So I'm still trying to figure that out.
Or let's say this way. So your biggest nightmare in 5 years, Becky biggest nightmare in 5 years, and the sweetest dream in 5 years.
The sweetest dream in 5 years. So prior to the pandemic, I would have told you that I wanted to double revenue and I wanted to double the size of our team in 5 to 7 years. When the pandemic hit, I was like, oh, I don't know. But here's what I would love. My dream would be like consistent growth for our company, so that we can continue to create opportunities for people to do great work on our team. Maybe now let's, rather than double, maybe we grow by 50% in 5 years. We figured out all the things that are challenging us right now so that we're consistently profitable all the time. I'd love to write another book in the next 5 years. I actually talked to my editor about the next book. So potentially this is 2022, maybe another book in 2024, 2025. So 5 years from now, maybe I have 3 books. The story of the 500 trees is a story that I created when my husband and I moved into a new house back in 2016. So we live on 5 acres. It's surrounded by trees. It's the most peaceful and private environment that you can imagine. But if you go back 30 years to when this house was built, it was a wide open cornfield. You could see the road, and the owners wanted to create privacy. And so 30 years ago, the owner of the house, his name was Mike, he bought 500 trees. They were so tiny, Martin, that they fit into a wheelbarrow. And he and his children painstakingly planted those 500 trees. They probably planted 300 more. And they did it because they had a vision of what they wanted this land to be. I think at the time they intended that the property would stay in their family. So they had a vision of this private tree-surrounded property that their family could enjoy for generations to come. And so they created that consistent action of planting and cultivating the trees, looking ahead to the future that they couldn't yet see. Those of us who want to grow influence online, to build an audience and build a community, need to have the patience of someone who would plant 500 trees and wait for them to grow. Knowing that the impact of the decisions that you make today can influence generations in the future. So that commitment to show up with value in a generous way consistently over a long period of time will create a future that you can't even imagine yet. And so I would encourage those who are listening, if you're building a business or writing a book or fueling a nonprofit cause or have a message to share, just to remember the 500 trees and be someone who would be the one to wait to see what difference you can make in the world. So for those who would like to learn more about me and Weaving Influence and my book, there are a few ways that people can get to know me better. So you can visit my website, weavinginfluence.com, or to learn more about me personally and the book, go to beckyrobinson.com. My book, Reach, Create the Biggest Possible Audience for Your Message, Book, or Cause is available at all the online retailers. And one of the interesting things about the book is that at the end of every chapter is a QR code. It's the same QR code throughout the book. But if you scan the QR code once you have the book, you have the opportunity to get into a free online course where I created more resources to help you on your journey. So when you buy the book, you're not only getting the book, you also get the course for free. The other thing is I do have a podcast. It's the Book Marketing Action Podcast. We do 2 podcasts per month. And if you listen to the podcast, you'll get ideas about how to grow your online influence and market your book.
"21st Century Entrepreneurship" with Martin Piskarik.